Start the webinar, then I'm going to start the restream. Start the webinar. Start the restream. All right, hi everybody. Looks like we got some people coming into the live studio audience. This is Mike Cadieux again from Procurement Foundry, and we have yet another amazing session for you today on content. We are here today with our friends from Vertex and Kristin Schwabenbauer, and I think I got that right?
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I asked you, like, sounds just like it's spelled. I'm like,
yeah.
Cool, great. All right. So Kristin is here from Vertex, the people up in Canada who are the tax Jedi Knights, I think is all I need to say, right? Just gonna let some more people come into the room. Going to check on our online streaming. Tina is in the control room as always. Tina, just curious, are we live on LinkedIn live streaming?
We are.
Fantastic. Hello to everybody on LinkedIn Live. Glad that you could join us today. If you do come in late to LinkedIn Live, or if you are in the studio audience and you missed some of this, it'll be embedded in our LinkedIn Live, and we also post it up into the Procurement Foundry community. Again, just some quick housekeeping notes for you. If you are on LinkedIn Live and you do want to ask Kristin and I questions about this topic today, and you will want to ask questions about this topic today, feel free to write them on LinkedIn, and then Tina will transcribe them over to our live Zoom room. If you're in the Zoom room, we have chat live, we have Q&A live. I don't always catch my eye on Q&A, but I do try to keep an eye on chat. So if you have questions, first off, everybody that's in the room, tell us where you're from, say hello, get acquainted, settle in. This is going to be a very valuable 60 minutes. And then also tell us where you're from. And then if you have questions, just throw them up on there. I don't like to hold questions to the end. Kristin doesn't like to hold questions to the end. We'll be chopping this up, and I'm just going to start feeding questions as they go. So if we hit a topic and you think that it's something pertinent to you, please just ask the question, and I'll try and jump it in. And if for some reason we don't get to everything, I know Kristin has dedicated herself to follow up with everybody as well. So here's, let me do this. Some quick introductions, and then we'll jump right in. Kristin, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about Vertex, what Vertex is as a company, and your role and how you engage with the clientele there.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, I'm Kristin Schwabenbauer. I'm outside of our headquarters, about an hour outside of Philly. And I've been at Vertex for a very long time, over 20 years. At Vertex, what we do is tax, indirect tax primarily. So tax services as well as tax technology. So many of you out there might already be a client, you might just not know it. And behind the scenes, your tax department is running Vertex. So that would probably be something to check in on. But that's, I would say we went public about 2 years ago now. And this is what we focus on. So we work with a lot of mid-market to larger, enterprise type of companies like Amazon, Apple, Starbucks, Best Buy. Behind the scenes, you're buying anything from any of those companies, Vertex is helping to calculate the tax to make sure that those companies and those organizations are compliant so that they can calculate the tax, but also remit the tax back to the jurisdictions appropriately. And that's from a global standpoint. Great.
Tammy just said hello in the chat. Hi, Tammy, welcome. You're from New York. You're going to want to pay attention because I've got a really good story for you out of New York. Yeah, I didn't know you were huge. For some reason, I always had Vertex pinned with Canada, and you said your headquarters is based out of Philly. I don't know why. Is that just a mental block for me? And you've always been out of Philly, right?
Yeah, we've always been outside of Philly. Nice. The company's been around for well over 40 years, so we're a very established,
nice, mature
company.
So I'm going to ask you the standard Philly question before we get going here. Are you a Geno's, or are you a where do you buy your cheesesteak in Philly?
Oh God, our local place is actually really
the local
good.
Place is even better than the tourist trap.
Yep.
Yeah, I amen to that. That's usually when I go down and I see people from Philly, they're like, you don't want to go over there. It's just a big line of people who don't know what they're doing.
Right, exactly.
So for anybody who's watching, Philadelphia is renowned for its cheesesteak, and it's almost a religion there.
Yes.
So right up with bad weather and football teams that
and angry
don't
fans.
Win very often.
Yeah.
And angry fans.
Angry fans.
Very much. So if you're in London right now, very much like what you're used to in soccer. Okay. So that said, I'm really, really excited about this. We talked about this in the pre-chat. I have a Mike Cadieux 5 top no-brainer list of things that if you're just starting out in this industry as a new CPO or something like that, or even just learning about, these are the 5 things that you should absolutely, without a shadow of doubt, be thinking about doing. And one of them is evaluating tax, right? Way too many procurement people just negotiate the price of the widget and don't think about the tax because, oh, it's like, oh yeah, that just goes to AP and I don't have to worry about it. It's death and taxes and there's no way to manipulate that. So, or even optimize that. And that is a misnomer in the marketplace. So can we talk for a minute about tax in the United States and specifically around indirect tax? Because I think there's a lot of procurement people, especially in the mid-market space, right? I'm talking 250 million to $1 billion worth of spend on third-party spend or indirect spend on an annual basis. The procurement departments are pretty small, 1 to 3 people for the most part. The financial organizations haven't hit critical mass yet. They probably don't even have, at that point, they might not even have a head of tax, right? It's probably their CFO and some type of controller that's trying to keep their hands around this whole thing, right? So let's talk a little bit about indirect tax, the line item at the bottom of your invoices that nobody pays attention to, right? Let's talk a little bit about that. Can you explain that to us? Jurisdictions, how that all works, when it's calculated, and why it's important?
Yeah, and I would be happy to. And this is what we do. So it's what I usually do when I try to explain indirect tax or consumer use tax on the purchasing side, as we're, of course, we're talking to procurement professionals, so that's really where we're focused. But what I usually do is start on the sales tax side because everyone's just very familiar with that, right?
Great place.
You live that. When you buy anything from Amazon, you're getting charged a sales tax, right? And the Amazon will collect that tax from you, and then in a monthly return, they remit back to those specific jurisdictions so that they get their tax money. So really with sales tax or even VAT on the customer side, it's a pass through. It's really straightforward. We've been around for over 40 years and kind of pioneered the tax calculation systems, if you will. I mean, that's one of our primary products. So automating that is pretty common. So if you're, in e-commerce, have an e-commerce presence, you have a point of sale, you've got your ERP where you're running invoices to charge customers. Having a third-party tax system like a Vertex O series is pretty standard. And we partner with SAP and Oracle and there's integrations, so that's very smooth and there's a lot of mature functionality there. However, on the indirect tax or on the procurement side of things, it's gotten a lot more complicated, especially as we have more options. You've got the Arebas, the Coupas, the trade shifts of the world that are helping to empower procurement professionals. But what's challenging with consumer use tax or tax that's you're paying on invoices that you're getting in to run your business is that it's not just a pass-through tax. There are many different dependencies on it. So you'll be charged, there's multiple locations and jurisdictions that you have to take into consideration. That's kind of hard to adhere to. So is your vendor charging you the right tax? How do they know how you're using what you're buying? Right. If it's a laptop, where it's being used, things like that, when it's being used, goods movement. So, I mean, all of those impact the tax that you should be charged, or maybe that you should be charging yourself and remitting back to the jurisdictions where you have nexus or you have, people residing in that specific location.
So there's the term nexus, right?
Nexus, yes.
Can you give me 10 seconds on nexus for people who aren't paying, who don't, this is new.
Yeah, nexus, it means simply, do you have, bodies or a warehouse or, employees or what have you in a specific jurisdiction, right? So that could be, you could have nexus then in the state of PA, in the city of Philadelphia, and then down to the actual, town. There can be multiple layers of nexus, but that's really important that you have a good comprehensive view of, okay, where is everybody located? Where are we traveling? Some jurisdictions have, and I guess what's really important is to say, some jurisdictions have, all jurisdictions have definitions of what they consider nexus and if you have presence. So like, for instance, with the e-commerce recently and Wayfair, right? If you're delivering items to a jurisdiction, Wayfair is saying, okay, then you have to collect and remit sales tax.
Right. Yep. Okay. Really interesting stuff. So I don't think people necessarily understand the scope and the magnitude of this. And let's be very, very clear. Vertex is the company that sits somewhere between your purchasing efforts and your ERP system,
Right.
and everything that goes through that system, that purchase to pay, right, system, the P2P, which I actually have coined a new term, which is P2P2P, which
Yep.
is purchase, right? So purchase to pay, purchase to procure to pay, procure to purchase, and then purchase to pay, right?
Yep.
So you got to do all the documentation, but at the end, somebody has to actually get paid. So you can cut a purchase order and do a procure to pay, right? This takes it one step further. And here's the interesting part about this. And we were talking about this earlier. There's over 6,000, approximately over 6,000 different taxation related venues, right, in the United States alone.
Mhm.
So if you think about it, let's take this on just face value. I'm buying software today, okay? If you're buying software as a service in California, it's a non-taxable event right now, right?
Okay.
If you're buying software as a service in downtown Chicago, in the inner city loop, inside of the circle, it's an 11.25% or 11.5%. I haven't seen the latest numbers. 11.25% taxable event, right? I mean, that's a massive swing, right?
Yeah.
But what people I don't think understand either is inside of that 11.5%, there's jurisdictions like you talk about, which is
Mhm.
you've got the state of Illinois, and then you've got the what is it?
Whether they're counties or
County,
districts or,
County and districts,
Yep.
and the inner Chicago City Rehabilitation District, and the Firefighters Guild, and all these other
Yeah.
things that have little percentages of all these different taxes that add up to the 11.5%. And just to give you an idea, I mean, from 0 in California to 11.25% in Chicago, that's an amazing amount, right? And I just don't think procurement people as a whole, unless you're running an AT department, even factor that into their equation. So let's talk a little bit more about the idea of having a strategy for your contract negotiations associated with your cost, and having a strategy associated with tax, right? Because
yeah.
again, we talked about this earlier, it's all one big item. I mean, imagine you're out there and you're negotiating $1 million Microsoft contract. You kill yourself to get 10% discount, and you buy it on a purchase order in Chicago, only to know that you gave 11.25% back. But most of the people that work in your company don't even work in Chicago, right?
Mhm.
So, and here's the thing: if you don't understand this, it's very easy for the systems that are doing checks and balances like Vertex to be able to go, yeah, that all jives. You bought
Mhm.
software, the billable address is downtown Chicago, Microsoft billed you, it says 11.25, great, off you go,
Right.
right? So it's really, really important to understand and have a strategy that encompasses both the cost of the purchase and the tax, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we hear that from all of our clients. You need to have the oversight, because it's going to affect budgets. It's going to, it's an expense. So, I mean, it's something to be taken into consideration. I think and with the pandemic, I think that really blew things out of the water, because you're buying different things, disinfectants or masks or whatever, depending on your business.
Right.
Well, you could, and now you might be purchasing in different areas of the world, so that all really affects what you need to pay from a tax perspective, or what you're charged. And you can really never trust that your vendor is charging you the right tax. And it's also
Right.
one of those things where it's like, give your people the tools. You work so hard to get good people, right? Give them the tools. It's the same as like 20 plus years ago, we would say you put in a sales tax calculation system like a Vertex, because you don't want your reps making tax decisions, your sales reps, like they're going to say, oh no, these are non-taxable, because they want to get the deal closed, right? So
Right.
that way, your tax department, it becomes your ERP almost, and your tax department makes the call, and it bypasses any decision-making process. That's another reason why. So if you can get tax on a PO up front, and someone's reviewing that and has to approve it, then all of a sudden things become different, and you've got a lot more tools in your arsenal to really make sure you're compliant and make sure, you're making the right decisions for the company.
Yeah. Proactive management, right? Getting ahead of it before it becomes a problem, because I'm going to tell you, once it goes through AP and it gets processed, even the best systems in the world are just going to verify, Vertex being one of the best systems in the world, is going to verify that, hey, you bought this thing at this shippable address, it matches out to 11.25% in downtown Chicago, you're green lighted. Good luck. Go
Right.
pay the invoice, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think, and I don't want to stay on that thread because I really want to talk about automating sales tax and what that means for the procurement industry as well. Maybe we'll come back and talk and maybe touch on self-assessing sales tax, which is, the ultimate goal here in using Vertex and products like yours as checks and balances against self-assessed sales tax and applications. But self-assessed sales tax is what I would call the master class in indirect purchasing tax. This is 300, 400 level, got to do this to graduate type stuff. This isn't the 101 stuff, right?
Right.
The 101 stuff is just what we talked about for the last 15 minutes, which is, hey, if you don't know what sales tax is going on your invoices, get a grip on it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the people that you're buying software from have no idea. In a lot of cases, they've got systems. Some of those systems aren't updated. Sometimes the sales rep figures it in, and all of a sudden he keys you in as a nonprofit. And by the way, this is something worth denoting: is the vendor, as crazy as this sounds, the vendor is not liable for the tax associated with sales tax. Right. So you buy something, and somebody gets an invoice, and you pay the invoice. The vendor that comes back and goes, oh, by the way, we know you paid us about 6 months ago for this. We forgot to put sales tax on this, so now we have to send you another invoice for the sales tax.
Yeah.
Right.
If that happens, yeah.
If that happens, and it happens, people do software upgrades, and all of a sudden their taxes are getting put on their invoices. Somebody reconfigures NetSuite because they're selling you something, and all of a sudden their ERP system isn't putting tax on it. Whatever it might be, those things happen all the time, or they double it, or the calculation's wrong, or something like that.
Yep.
Even with the good data. So regardless of the fact of what it says on your invoice, you as the purchasing the company are liable for the sales tax and usage tax associated with what you buy.
Yep.
Which that was an education for me too, because I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. My vendors are making mistakes and it's my fault, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I have to pay the penalties on it too because my vendor didn't do this in time.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Vertex's position in this whole scenario, which is you're a tax automation. I want to say plugin, but that isn't enough, right? You're the de facto checks and balances of making sure everything that's going through that system, from the minute you buy it to the minute it gets paid, when the invoice comes in, just like you're doing your triple checks in procurement. It's like, oh, okay, I got a purchase order, I received the goods, I got an invoice, everything matches. There's another check that happens, which is a quadruple check, which is, hey, the tax is actually right on all of this stuff too, right?
Right.
And that's where Vertex slides in. Vertex are the people that sit on the wall every night and pay attention to the 6,000 taxing authorities across the United States, because some municipality just decided, or some not suburb, what's the word I want to use, down in Louisiana?
Parishes.
Yeah. One of the Louisiana parishes just together. Oh, Millie's here. Hi, Millie. One of the Louisiana parishes just got together and voted, and they're going to go from 0.25% to 0.275%.
Yep. And
all of a sudden that changes in a heartbeat. And now if you're not checking, you're the folks who keep track on all of that, right?
Yeah.
And put that into your system, download it back into the system. Now all of a sudden it's checking that parish, and off to the race you go. So let's talk a little bit about automating tax in the P2P process. So obviously I'm spitting it why people need to care about this, but this is why people need to care about this, right? Because this can be a major problem. There's a lot of penalties and fees like that, things like that, right?
Yeah, it's a major risk, and that's why we're so happy to partner with Procurement Boundary, because we're trying to get the word out. It's trying to educate procurement professionals that they need to team up with their tax professionals, right? Partner often and partner early. And really find out what are the goals and align the strategies. Just talk to them, because you both want to do what's best for the company, right? And you want to grow and you want to be strategic, but you need to work together. So with Vertex, we're really meant to be, and I think I found the right word for you, Mike. It's like a tax ERP, if you will. It's like Command Central, right? So that your tax folks don't have to look up rates and, rules and regulations and things like that. We'll take care of that for you. And then you simply, like when you implement, you're simply configuring it. So you make it a smart system and it's intelligent so that it knows where you have nexus, right? It knows where you have warehouses. It knows where you have office buildings and people and that kind of thing. And that's you set it up appropriately. And then we'll do a lot of the work when we get that information on that PO or at that requisition or with the invoice to say, all right, we're looking at where it was being purchased, what was being purchased, when is it going to be used? And then what are our policies internally? Like you probably have finance tax policies of how you want to handle things. Do you want to do accruals? Like if generally what people will do in real world scenarios is they'll always pay the vendor whatever they charge them, but it's a matter of, because they want to, process the invoice. And if it's, and there's thresholds even that you can set up within the system where it says, okay, if they're off by $5, that's fine. But if they're off by anything more, it gets flagged, right? And then we either pick up the phone and call them or get it situated, or you can have policies in place where, oh, you know what, we're going to pay this invoice, but we still are on the hook to pay the state of PA or to pay the state of New York and those local jurisdictions another $15. And that's what's going to that's the scary stuff. Because if you're not paying the state of PA because you're using a laptop in the state of PA, they want their money. Like one way or another, these guys are going to get their money, and now more than ever. Does that make sense?
It does, but I want to send a really big spotlight on that for a second, okay? Because we started talking about sales tax and getting sales tax right, and the fact that Vertex helps keep watch on what all the different sales taxes are of the world. Right. And we're used to this, right? You go out and buy something and you pay sales tax. And I'll use this as an example because I'm from Massachusetts, right? And we have our tax-friendly friends to the north in New Hampshire, right?
Yeah, right.
So a lot of people from Boston go to New Hampshire to buy furniture, right?
Yep.
And other things like that, right? Okay, great. And they'll go to, I'm not condoning this. This is not a tax strategy. This is not advice in any way, but some people might go to New Hampshire and realize, hey, I can buy a $1,500 couch and I don't have to pay tax on that at 6.25%.
It's huge.
And if I got a pickup truck, nobody at the toll booth in Massachusetts cares about the couch in the back of the pickup truck, right? Okay, but the reality is, and this is how I'm going to dumb this down so everybody can understand this, it's sales and use tax. Right. So the sales tax was the New Hampshire strategy. The use tax is, hey, wait a minute, I'm actually using this couch in Massachusetts.
Yes.
And it was a capital purchase. So technically, I owe the state of Massachusetts 6.25% on whatever I paid in New Hampshire for that because I'm using it in Massachusetts.
Right.
Correct?
Absolutely. And that's the same. Yeah. That's the same thing we have in PA because Delaware is tax-free. You can easily go and do that.
So this is a Herculean effort, in my opinion, just to make sure that you get the sales tax thing right, which is, I don't know if my vendors are charging me the right price. Maybe their system's off a little bit. Maybe the parish in Louisiana changed, and I don't know that. And nobody keeps up with that. You're the only people that I'm aware of that keep up with that. God bless you for doing it, right? Okay. I mean, tax people, I can't imagine what happened before Vertex, right? But you're the ones who are keeping those, I just want to say, tax tables going and then feeding that into our ERP system so that we're making sure that that's all checked out and balances, right?
Yeah.
And but at the same time, so that's the sales tax justification verification thing. But the use tax thing is where the procurement people get hung up, in my opinion. And the reason why is because and for the people, actually, you know what, one thing I want to do before we go any further is, for all the people that are in the room right now, we've been talking for a little while about sales and use tax. On a scale of 1 to 5 in the chat channel right now, I just want everybody in the room to tell me, oh my God, 1 is, I have no idea what you're talking about, and this is scaring me. And 5 is, Mike, I am self-assessing sales tax and playing the float card against the state of California and the state of New Jersey. And I'm keeping my own cash with my Treasury Department and paying out the municipalities on an annual basis when I need to. And I'm calculating and allocating out my tax. So that is Jedi Knight stuff versus I don't even look at the invoices. So just everybody tell us where you're at in this so I can get a vibe for the audience, okay? All right. So that said, I want to go back to New York for a second, and we're going to talk a little bit about, I mean, one of the questions that I had for you is, why is indirect tax so challenging? But I think we've already started to beat that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always changing, right? I'll let you talk. Just tell me a little bit about why, in your opinion, why is this so challenging, and why do people need to have Vertex in their system?
Yeah, and to your point, I don't know how people, decent sized companies do it without a third party tax system. I really don't, because it is so complex. It's, sales tax is easy. Consumer use tax and figuring that out on your purchases is really hard because of all the who, what, when, why. What are you doing? So, and then there's also, if you look at it from a business flow standpoint, so sales tax, you have essentially, if we're talking kind of technology wise, you have two calls. You have a quote, right? You can see the quote in your Amazon cart before you check out, and then you have place the order. Well, with consumer use tax, there's the potential touch points there's like 4. So there's the purchase order, there's the requisition, there's the actual invoice, and then there's the final decision. Oh yeah, we're approving this invoice. And it's almost like a paper trail, right? Because if anything then changes in the tax side of things, that's a red flag. So it's so important to have, those touch points where, you get Vertex's opinion. Is this okay? Does this look okay? As you're going through that purchasing process. And so like that in and of itself makes it complex, because then when you talk about the technology, like the Arebas and the Coupas and the SAPs and everybody else, there's different levels of what they allow us to do. And there's different levels of, where they are from, embracing third-party tax and letting us help our clients. So that has to be taken into consideration when you're looking to automate. But what I always come back to is some automation is better than no automation. So whatever you can do, it's whatever you can do to get some help and some support and some oversight in there with like a Vertex, you're going to be better off.
Yeah, and to note, this is going to be out on a limb. It's going to be really out there, but I'm going to say it anyway. People who are going in as procurement folks for the first time into mids, I'm going to say the 250 million to 750 million. You're the first procurement person in the door there. You're really trying to get your arms around process and strategy and governance and things like that. One of the, probably in the first 90 days, questions that you need to ask, in my opinion, is, okay, where are we at on tax? Mm-hmm. And where are we buying stuff? And it's regardless of the complexity of your organization. But right. If your organization isn't in one building in downtown Chicago, which makes it easy, if you own multiple subsidiaries and you have divisions and you've got things like that, and you're attempting to put centralized sourcing in place and things like that, you really need to sit down with the CFO and say, okay, listen, I understand we're trying to get some cost savings here. I understand we're trying to get sustainability. I understand we're trying to get vendor inclusion in supply diversity. Where are we at on the tax line, right? Yeah. Because I mean, think about this as a discussion point. You're in downtown Chicago again, right? And you're in the loop, right? And you kill yourself to get 10% off of Microsoft, only to know that 95% of your employee population, because you have Nexus in Chicago, right? You've got an office in Chicago. You've got actual people there. Maybe your back-end operations are down in downtown Chicago. Maybe the founder of the company is from Chicago and he just likes to keep an office there. And yeah. that's where traditionally the billing was done. So that's where it's still being done, right? Yeah. Okay, great. You're getting 11% sales and use tax on that location, even though all your employees are around the country, right? And I'd hate to have you go kill yourself to negotiate a 10% discount just to give it back to the state of Illinois, when technically you don't own the state of Illinois. You only owe them money on the 5% of the people that work there, right? Yeah. So for me, if you're not paying attention when you're walking in the door as a newbie, as a lone, what I call the lone wolf, so you're the first one in the door, right? If you're not starting to think about that as a strategy, and I'm going to go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the hour here, is if you're not incorporating tax acquisition strategy into your overall sourcing strategy, you need to start thinking about that, okay? Yeah. Because I'll tell you where it goes off the rails. Where it goes off the rails, and then I want to talk a little bit. I want to get back and talk about, hey, listen, what should some of our people be talking about? What questions should they be asking? Right? Because I know you've got a list of questions here that people should be asking about, right? if you're in the state of New York, like I was in a previous life, and you're buying all of your computer software out of the state of New York, okay? And again, this doesn't matter if you're buying $1,000 worth of, nobody cares about $1,000. 9% of $1,000 is $90. Nobody's gonna go out on a limb for $90, right? Okay, but when you're buying 10 million, 20 million, $30 million worth of software, right? In the state of New York, and you realize that not everybody that works for you actually lives in the state of New York, right? And you realize that half of your employee population actually lives in California, where sales, or even Massachusetts.
Right.
The difference between Massachusetts at 6.25 and New York at 9.25 is 33% savings on tax. And oh, by the way, like Christine already said, the state of Massachusetts does not care that you bought this stuff in New York, right? They're going to look and they're going to go, hey, okay, the vendor collected 9.25% based on the fact that you told them to invoice you in the state of New York, but 50% of your employee population is up in the state of Massachusetts. You should be, when the state of Massachusetts calls, and they will call eventually, when they call, they're going to go, hey, this is really nice to see you. Really excited about the fact that you conduct business in our state. We walked through the offices and we looked at where your employees actually work from home now, because everybody's working remotely. And a whole bunch of your people live in Massachusetts. So that software that you bought, it's actually being used in Massachusetts. So not only do you owe us the 6.5%, 6.25%, but you owe us penalties because you bought it 3 years ago and you haven't paid us in time.
Yeah.
Now, compounding penalties on top of all that, forget about anything you negotiated in savings. It's all out the door, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so organizations like yourself are helping to combat that. And you know, the most interesting part about this whole thing for me is, if you do this the right way and you get ahead of it, this is almost as good as negotiating a discount on the actual deal, right?
Yeah.
And I got a question for you, Chris, because I hear this all the time. I run a procurement organization with 6,000 people in it, right? And I'm like, hey, what's your tax strategy for software acquisition? And I know it's physical, and we can talk a little bit more about that. I want to hear about the categories of spend and indirect spend that are really red light items, okay? I ask people all the time, like, what's your tax strategy associated with software acquisition? And they're like, oh, we got a PO box in Boca Raton, we're fine, right? And I'm like, yeah, I feel like you shouldn't have told me that, because it's admitting tax fraud, and I want to deny the fact that you even said that to me.
Yeah.
So I really hope you look good in orange, because if that is your published strategy, you might want to delete that email right away, right?
Yeah.
It's tax fraud. And you're essentially telling, if, all right, I'm going to buy this in Florida, but all my people are in Manhattan. You're taking this, you're selling this, you're telling the state of New York, hey, listen, yeah, I'm using this software in your state, but I'm actually buying it down there so I don't have to pay you.
Right. Right. And that's why all of these rules, and the rules really came from some Supreme Court cases, right? So they had issues like this, and they went all the way up to the Supreme Court, because, you know, and it's just the evolution of how, you know, taxes, how the governments are evolving and how they need to collect their money and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's a huge liability and a huge risk, and it's not one that companies should be taking. And yeah, I mean, it's just stupid.
you know what's interesting about this that just rubs me the wrong way? And if you get really good at this, and I'm going to tell you right now, go down the hall. If you have a tax person, if you have a sales tax department, most likely the procurement people do not know the sales tax people.
Right.
I got very, very lucky a few years ago and met mine, and she's amazing, right? I'm not going to say her name on camera. This woman is a Wile E. Coyote super genius in sales tax, and taught me everything I know, which is a rounding error. But she saved my life, and I probably should have been fired because of what I didn't know as a chief procurement officer about tax. But that said, if you're lucky enough to have a sales and tax department, the need for you to understand this is extremely important. In the smaller companies, like I said earlier, there probably isn't even a tax organization yet. So you need to, this is part of the PO. I mean, this is part of the invoice. Like, you're responsible for the stuff you buy, including, unfortunately, that last line item on the bottom, right?
Yeah.
Right. So when this goes, this is the part that rubs me the wrong way the worst, right? And I don't know why. I think it's just the procurement guy in me. Is okay, I did everything right. I paid sales tax, right? And this is my example of how you can do this. And somebody, Denise says, I'm a Jedi. Congratulations, Denise. God bless you. You're a Jedi at this. This is fantastic. This is the part that made me really stand up and go, we got to get good at this. Is when I found out that my vendor population was collecting sales tax on the stuff that they were selling me, and they don't have to pay that right away to the taxing authorities, and they're collecting interest on the money that's sitting in the bank accounts waiting to pay the taxing authorities, because some taxing authorities you only have to pay them once a year. Some of those little tax authorities down in California and Louisiana, they only take, like the county of Wichita, Kansas, takes payment once a year for sales tax.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. It doesn't matter how big it is. They're taking payments once a year. So all that money, and it might be not a lot, or it could be pretty astronomical. Somebody's sitting on that in an escrow account collecting interest on your money because you just decided to pay the tax bill and let the vendor collect the VIG. And I'm like, that just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
So now I got to go all the way down the rabbit hole. I got to self-assess sales tax. My treasury team loves me because now I'm holding capital in my bank accounts.
Yeah.
It's not without its challenges. It's work, but at the same time, now at least you're doing it right, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's huge. That's huge. I mean, and all of those, all these little jurisdictions, they have all their rules about how and when you file and how frequently and all that stuff. So yeah, they could be making a lot of money on the float.
Yeah. I mean, this vendors make money on the float. That's the part that really rubs me wrong. I'm like, okay, so vendors make money on the sales tax float, but if they don't charge me sales tax, it's not their fault and I'm still liable for it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I'm playing cards with somebody who has all the cards.
Well, you're playing cards with the government, right? And they're covered. They want their money, and they're covering themselves. And they were really smart. I mean, years and years ago to put this in place. It's harder. Obviously, like they're not going to come after you, Mike, if you go buy a couch in New Hampshire, right, and drive back down. But it's a lot easier when you're a $250 million company in their jurisdiction, and they're like, let's see what you do. With these types of audits too, when someone comes in the door, you really have to prove it to them. So your tax team has to really say, okay, here's the paper trail, here's what we do to make sure you guys get your money. It's a challenge in and of itself, and I mean that's a job in and of itself with these jurisdictions, because any of them can walk in the door at any time.
Yeah, so let's go back to tax automation, because this is a place where tax automation and companies like Vertex and yourself, you help with things like that, right? So I mean, you're one of the, hey, look, we're doing our stuff the right way. We have Vertex deployed. Please leave us alone and go haunt somebody else. Yeah. Right. And in a lot of cases, I know that when the state comes in, right, and says, hey, we'd like to take a look at your stuff. The minute they go, oh, you got Vertex deployed? Okay, yeah, great. We're just gonna, let's move along.
Yeah,
like we're looking for the companies that don't have Vertex deployed.
It's very true, because they know, well, you've invested. It doesn't always mean that you're using it the right way if you haven't set it up the right way, but you've invested, because it's an investment to get and it's a subscription service, so you're paying an annual fee, so they know ahead of time, and plus then you're able to run certain reports pretty easily and things like that, because all that information is stored within Vertex O series or any of our calculation systems, and they're at your fingertips, so you're able to get them that information and make that audit a heck of a lot less painful. And I'll tell you what, the ROI on doing a Vertex O series, consumer use tax integration is phenomenal, and it's almost immediate. I've seen folks that have done this, and they've had to, we've been in bad situations where they have to do custom integrations and things like that to get everything that they need. Within 10 weeks, they've already seen the value. And when you implement a software platform like a Vertex or Coupa or Reba or whatever, you're making an investment for years and years, right, to keep it in place. So just think about that. If you're immediately getting ROI, it's kind of a no-brainer. And that's what I talk to. I know a lot of our clients may just have sales tax and it's hooked up to their ERP or their e-commerce application. And then I got to talk to them about procurement. And I'm like, you guys, why aren't you doing it with procurement? You already have half the software implemented. Like, that's immediate ROI. So, I mean, it's something to think about.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's talk about what successful tax automation implementations look like a little bit. Tell me a little bit about, the types of clients where you're seeing a lot of success. Talk about how the relationship is built. Talk about the teams that you're seeing that really where you're seeing it, because implementations can go sideways all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what successful implementations look like and how to prep for that, and where procurement can be involved and should be involved. And is this something where we always talk in procurement about procurement people going from tactical to strategic thought process,
Right.
and bringing real strategic thought process to the table. And this is one where this thing has real teeth and has real dividends and has real ROI on it.
Yep.
And only from my own personal, I know it has real teeth, because I know we did a reclamation against sales and use tax in the state of New York, and we pulled back 7, 8 digits, mid 8 digits
It's
from the
huge.
state of New York, right? Because we didn't have that many people in New York. We were paying the state of New York. That doesn't mean I don't have a liability in the other states, but it means that at least I didn't overpay the state of New York, right?
Right.
Interesting sidebar to that. Probably the most interesting part of that whole thing that I went through a few years ago with sales and use tax was the fact that the state of New York actually owes you interest on the money that you erroneously paid them in tax,
Oh, that's great.
which I thought was amazing, because we did a calculation. I was like, okay, it's, X number of dollars. And they're like, it's actually X plus Y. And I'm like, why is that? And they're like, we owe you interest on the money that we've been holding for you because you erroneously paid sales tax to us. And I'm like, you're going to pay me interest on the money that I screwed up and overpaid you. Yeah.
Right. That's crazy.
And they said, wait a minute, Mr. Cadieux, you're from Boston, right? And I said, yeah. And they said, remember a bunch of people got together and threw some tea in the harbor a long time ago? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, that double taxation thing without representing. Yeah, it's kind of like that. That's why we have to give you interest. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. So let's talk about the keys to success around a tax implementation, and where procurement can play in this space to look really strategic, as opposed to just going, oh, we got to, I don't even know what that is. What, we got to tax? Okay. Like, this is something procurement should be bringing in, right?
Yeah, and what I'm seeing, what I have been seeing for years, and I've heard it from some of our largest companies, and it's so scary, is that tax is the last to know. So when when procurement engages and they evaluate the Arebas and the Coupas, or whatever, tax gets notified that okay, the implementation is starting tomorrow, and this is what we chose, and this is how we're gonna do it. And this is how we're going to handle our invoices and everything else. And it blows them up completely, because they already have all of these processes in place with your ERP and all that stuff. So I always go back to, if you can partner with tax early, and partner with them closely, because they're going to have very specific, it really goes down to the data points. They have very specific things that they need to cover and check off from a compliance standpoint and get. And especially with consumer use tax, when you're, in the liabilities there's a lot of financial accounting that goes on behind the scenes to make it really complex. So if they don't have their data points and things like that up front, then you're really hurting the company in the end. I know Mike Bernard, our chief taxation officer, was the vice president of Microsoft tax at Microsoft for, I think, close to 30 years, if not over. And he said what he would do before they had everything in place is they would get assessed. They would get, have these audits and have risks and penalties and things like that charged to them. And then he would bill it back to procurement. So it's something to really think about, it's really going off your bottom line. So getting back to the implementation, partner with them early. They end up being pretty complicated implementations without the right people involved, right? Mm-hmm. So you may have some implications with even your SAP and your Oracles, your main ERP. So you might have to get folks from that team involved. So I'd also recommend, working with, if you're a large enough company and can afford it, working with like a KPMG, a Deloitte, an Accenture, EY, PwC, those guys, because they do this stuff day in and day out, and they're going to be able to advise you as to the best practices, as well as what technology you've purchased and how you're going to best be able to utilize that. That's key, and that's really, really priceless.
Yeah. And believe it or not, there's a really interesting small group of highly educated. It might not be KPMG, it might not be Accenture, right? But there's a small group of really, really talented small consultancy boutique practices that know this now. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, hey, I manage a fleet of 10,000 delivery trucks and I got to go have a conversation around fleet negotiation services. Like, yeah, you know what's interesting is the person who managed fleet services for XYZ company opened up a consultancy practice 3 years ago and is a Jedi in this space, right? Like, and you don't have to pay $475 an hour to get the same level of expertise. So I think there's opportunities there in the Big Four.
Yep.
I also think there's an emerging boutique knowledge base of consultancy practices that can help in this space as well. People who really understand the dance between procurement, accounts payable, finance, and treasury, and how that all works together. Because believe it or not, what we're talking about is a synergy between all of those organizations.
Yeah.
Treasury wants to hold its money as long as it can. Finance wants to make sure that they don't get hit with penalties and fees associated with erroneous tax pay. Procurement just wants to get the thing pushed through the system and work at the speed of business. And accounts payable just wants to verify that, hey, okay, listen, this invoice looks right and smells right based on the systems that we have deployed and works. So I got a question. One of the questions that came up, does the tool service guide procurement in which best global legal entity to use on contracts for large enterprise-wide agreements?
That's a good question.
That's a great question.
I would say not directly, directly. Although by using it, you're going to see patterns and things like that. So not directly, but that would be, again, maybe one of the consulting firms that you're talking about that would be able to really help support that. Yeah.
And I would say to you this, I'm sorry, I didn't, it was anonymously asked. So whoever asked that question, great question. Thank you. I would say this, your understanding of reading the tea leaves that are coming out of a Vertex and talking to your tax team and understanding where your usage is has to, and again, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning of this is you need to have a tax strategy and a sourcing strategy, and they need to work together. Because let's be honest, some of the big enterprise class products, most of them technology related products, have different SKU pricing in different regions throughout the world. They have different price catalogs around the world, right? There's tax-free zones in India. There's tax-free zones in South Africa. But then again, the catalog price in Europe might be 10% more than the catalog price in the United States because they're hedging against the euro, right? Or something along that line. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe European companies are just harder to sell software to. You know what I mean? I have no idea. And because of that, they need to put 10% on it. But you have to value, okay, well, maybe it's less. So it's, hey, I'm a European-based company, but I have Nexus in the United States. Should I be buying my software and my equipment in the United States because of the taxation law? But then what is the I'll call it the continental VAT transfer, and what is that going to cost me on the flip side? That has to be fact. When you start talking enterprise class, 5 million, 10 million, 25 million, again, the sales tax is so significant of a line item that it could be more than what you're negotiating in the savings opportunity. You want to make sure you play that fiddle just right. Yeah. Right.
I agree.
Okay. So what are some of the key, I know we talked a little bit about it, but I want to hit it on its head. We got about 10 minutes left. So if anybody's got any more questions for Kristin around sales and use tax, a little bit about actively deploying it, what procurement departments should be taking out of Vertex, what you need to be looking at from your vendor population and making sure your vendor population is doing this the right way. I mean, I know that's a shocker to a lot of people that the vendor population is not held liable for screwing up the tax on the invoice. It's you.
Yeah.
That's just mind-boggling to me. Let's talk about some of the key benefits of a tax engine like yours and how it improves the P2P process, right? We always talk about the P2P process and enhancing it through digitalization and things like that. Obviously, there's some, speed to market, there's automation, there's checks and balances, there's risk mitigation. What are some of those key benefits that you see in a tax deployment like this?
I mean, it's really all about empowering. You're a business to empower procurement professionals. We're in business to empower, procurement professionals as well, and tax professionals. So it's about, not burdening your AP group on having to make tax decisions, right? Like that's a big deal. That's not something that they should know how to do, or they shouldn't be wasting time. If you're talking about processing like $300,000 invoices a year, right, that need processed and approved, automation is going to help with that. And then it's going to eliminate the risk. But your AP people should not have that burden, and they shouldn't have to reach out to tax constantly for questions and things like that, which is what happens. And then it slows everything down. So, when that's, when you're not automating, think about any of the KPIs that you're trying to reach, that goes out the door. There's a fellow that we have in our chief taxation office also, who was in industry for a long time. And he's like, he always recommends, he's like, I'd like to see a tax quality KPI, because are you really doing the right thing as efficiently as possible and making the right decision? And I think that's key and critical. So that's one of the things I would say is, and I kind of hone in on that, especially with, the Great Resignation and all this stuff. You've got to give your people the tools.
Yeah, I like that. I like having a KPI associated with tax quality, right? Or optimization of tax against the actual utilization catalog. And so somebody asked the question, does Vertex determine, how does Vertex determine usage, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that it's kind of, it's a layered approach, if you will, and it's all built into the system. So it goes back to, you kind of take it from step one and build. But what you'll do is when you do an implementation, no matter what it's hooking to, there be an ERP or, an Ariba, it's a mapping exercise. So what are you purchasing? If you're using an Ariba, and it's in direct purchasing, right? It's not direct for manufacturing. So it's laptops and software and things like that. And then you map to our categories of what we manage. So then, we cover all of that and give you that content. And then behind the scenes, when we're going through the process of getting that information from an Ariba or an SAP, we will go through the checks and balances step by step of every component of that invoice based on how you have the system set up to determine all of that. So it ends up happening behind the scenes, and it's all within the system, within the calculation system.
are there certain categories of indirect procurement that are trickier than others? I mean, obviously, we've been talking a lot about technology today and software. I know furniture, fixture, and asset is a big thing as well, right?
Yep.
I mean, these are some of the bear traps out there in purchasing where, hey, I bought all this furniture for all of these offices, or maybe I'm buying Herman Miller chairs for all of my people to go work from home now because of the fact that we're all remote work, and I have to ramp up at $3,500 per office for my employees' offices.
Right.
There's a bear trap there, which is, okay, I just want to be centrally billed, because procurement's natural tendency is just I want one bill, make it easy, let's get it all together so I can process this.
Right.
But the reality is that if you're not paying attention to it, again, that's another example of, if you're buying Herman Miller chairs in downtown Chicago and only 5 of those 1,000 chairs is in downtown Chicago, man, did you just help out the local economy in Illinois?
Yeah. And you pissed off everybody else when you're sending it to Dallas or Houston or California, because they want their money.
Well, you haven't upset them yet, but when they find out that what you've done, that's when they're going to be upset, right?
Exactly.
And that's really interesting, because now you've got these decentralized work pools, right? It was really easy back in the day when you had a data center in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, underneath a salt mine or something, wherever the data center was in King of Prussia, right?
Yep.
To me, it seems like the safest place in the world, because that's where everybody built their fallout shelters when they were building data centers. It was very easy when all the servers were there and all the software was there, and you were getting invoiced, and you weren't dealing with software as a service, right? Because all of the software and the computing was being done in one location, and you were just getting screen refreshes, and the software licenses were on the servers back there. Now you take decentralized cloud-based computing, and it's like, okay, we're using this software as a service thing, right? And by the way, I don't know where it is. I don't know where it is now, because the last time I looked at it was a couple of years ago, right? Denise says renewable energy is a challenge, and we can talk on that in a second. But all the states haven't even completed their legislation on SaaS. At least they hadn't a couple of years ago. I don't know if they've actually gotten to the position where they've actually put a position out about SaaS, but I remember there, even a couple of years ago, they were still juggling for position on, okay, how are we going to handle this, and what's it going to mean, and what is, what is Wyoming doing versus Connecticut versus California? It's like, I mean, it's still not, this is all fluid at all times, right?
It is very, and it's evolving. So you look at the next area of, that's going to be a big, I think, topic in 2022. It's digital services and digital media and digital advertising, right? So
Right.
they want their money. They're going to figure out as we evolve, and the technology evolves and how we purchase evolves, whether we're consumers or we're companies purchasing, and they're going to try to figure out how to get it, right? So that's, if you're doing digital media now, that's a big deal. And that's probably one of the next big topics of debate.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was asking you about was, okay, so we know about the technology bear traps. We know about the furniture fixture assets. Digital media is becoming a hot topic, right? And these are the reasons why putting a tax verification and processing automation tool in place is critical to success if you're in the procurement space. And some of this might not be your responsibility,
Right.
but trust me, you're going to be one of the people called into the principal's office, along with the head of accounts payable and the head of finance. Somebody's going to be called into the CFO's office and go, okay, I pay you 3 meatballs a lot of money. How come nobody figured out that I owe the state of Illinois $10 million because we bought all this furniture out of New Hampshire, but it got shipped to Chicago, or artwork, or I mean, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Digital media is really interesting. I'd love to talk more about digital media. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to potentially come back and talk more about digital media, because everybody, and I mean everybody, is buying digital media now, from small tiny shops up to the big monsters. And a lot of them are leveraging agencies to do their digital media buying for them, with trickle down tax liability issues, I'm assuming, through pass down. And that's a really, really interesting topic for me for another day.
Yeah.
I'd love to do another session on just digital media and the tax and the implications of having a tax system for digital media related, because everything's digital media now. Okay, it is out of time. Kristin, let me ask you this. Last parting shot, I ask everybody this. What are some of the takeaways? Give me one or two, because usually I have a panel of people, so it's just you and I today. Give me one or two of the key takeaways that people need to know as they leave today, and what they're thinking about tomorrow when they wake up and go, wow, I saw something really interesting yesterday.
Partner with tax. Partner often, partner early. And just keep in mind that some automation, as far as tax is concerned, is better than none.
Yes.
Those are my two big things. Don't overcomplicate it. You've got people that know what they're doing. You just have to, and yes, it is absolutely designed for Canadian companies as well.
Thank you, Becky. Slipping it in at the last second. Thank you, Becky.
Yep, we can handle Canada. That's not a problem.
Yeah. And I can attest to that, because at my former gig, I had Canadian agencies and US agencies and the whole thing. So I double down on that. I think partnering with tax is probably the single most important thing you can do. I don't think procurement people know where the tax department sits. I don't think procurement people know who runs tax for them.
Right.
And again, in the smaller operations, I'm talking 25 to 75, 750 million, 250 to 750 million. The head of tax is probably your CFO.
Yeah, or your controller.
There isn't a tax. I mean, I got really, really lucky. We were pushing billions of dollars through my last employer, and we had a team of 3. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to talk about some of the most the name? Oh, sorry. You want to talk about some of the most overworked and underpaid people? Head down the hall and meet the tax folks that are responsible for sales and use tax, because most likely, number one, they're selling something, so they got to make sure that the outbound sales are right.
Exactly.
That's the first one of their problems, because people get orange jumpsuits for that every day, right? Yep. And then secondly, and corporate tax, right? And then the third one is indirect tax, which unfortunately is the third line item on the pecking list of the tax team, right? But the golden nuggets that are inside of indirect tax and the money that you can save as part of your overall strategy, superhero status when you walk in the CFO and go, by the way, I've incorporated sales and use tax into my overall negotiation strategy. Boom, right?
Yep.
Now all of a sudden you look like a superstar. Like, wow, somebody's been doing their homework on weekends. All right, Kristin, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time today. I love the insights. I think people need to go back and watch this. There's probably a dozen little nuggets in here for people to take away. But partnering with tax is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Bring coffee and donuts. They spend lots of hours there, and try not to bother them during the last couple of weeks of tax season.
Yep.
That's my advice. But other than that, free game. All right, Kristin, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you again to everybody at Vertex for sponsoring for Procurement Foundry. We really, really love to partner with you. And again, this is on top of my no-brainer list. Kristin, if people had questions but they can't get in touch with you, they can find you on LinkedIn, throw up a smoke signal. What do you got?
Absolutely. Yeah, LinkedIn. Yep.
Fantastic. And if you have other questions, you can DM us inside of the Procurement Foundry, and we will shoot you up there as well. And I'm thinking we might want to do even more on this. Maybe open up our own little sales and use tax channel inside of Procurement Foundry. Because I think it warrants that.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, Kristin. Have a great day. Thanks again for all your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye now.